Welcome to the Dr. Nikki Starr Show, a podcast to support you in your spiritual awakening and personal development. As a spiritual teacher, healer, and intuitive coach, my intention is to empower you to live your ultimate potential and your ultimate life. As a former medical doctor and mystic, my role is to bridge the gap between science and spirituality to support you in understanding more of your multidimensional aspects. I share on a diverse range of topics, and it's all to support your greatest becoming. My mission is to continue reaching millions of people for the healing and awakening of humankind for the creation of the new earth. Thank you for being here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Today, I am here with Ceri. She is an international DJ, music producer, and she's also on her spiritual path, and most recently released a track called Don't You Want to Have Tantric Sex with Me? And I thought, what a great episode that would be, because when I heard a little bit about what inspired her to create it, I thought, more people need to understand what tantric sex truly is and what some of the misconceptions are. And in the bonus, we're going to share how you can co-create a more tantric sex relationship with yourself and a partner. And so welcome, Ceri. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Nikki. Really happy to be here.
Yeah. And so what inspired you to, in the music scene world, create a track called Don't You Want to Have Tantric Sex?
Well, it's a very interesting story. It's a very long story, but I'll try and be brief for you. So it has quite a few elements to it. The inspiration from the track actually came from a heartbreak that I experienced, and my reflections on that situation about what could have been done better, my reflections on the perception of me and the other person involved. And also it's like a little bit tongue-in-cheek and a little bit cheeky, because it's almost like, well, don't you want to have tantric sex with me? And it kind of like the person in question kind of missed the chance to really go deep and do that because of what happened during that situation.
And so what exactly happened? Like, what's the problem? Like, of course people want to have tantric sex. So it's like, what happened that it didn't happen?
Wow, great question. So I think really it was a breakdown in communication. I think looking back, there was a few moments of miscommunication. And I also think on my part, also an assumption that when I spoke about certain things that this person would actually understand what it was, and they didn't. And that caused a bit of a shutdown and a breakdown in communication. But then when I actually sat down and said, look, what's going on? What's happening? I can feel something's kind of weird between us. We spoke about it. He explained his perception. I explained mine. And we just realized that neither of us was right or wrong, but we both just misinterpreted it completely. And that was like a recurrent theme. And the breakdown of that relationship really came from some miscommunications and misinterpretations. And I think for me, it was a massive lesson in how to improve my communication moving forwards. And I also believe as well that during that situation that the angels, the guides, whatever you want to call them, the universe was really giving us both signs like, this is true divine soulmate love. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. But I felt like even though there were all these signs, the other person didn't really see them because they weren't as connected to their intuition and their heart as I was. So I was just like, oh my God, I can see all this happening. And they were just like, what? Do you know what I mean? And it was the most frustrating thing I've ever seen, ever experienced, sorry. And the first opening line of the longer version of the track is actually, when your souls are in love and your humans are getting in the way. And that's what I really felt was happening during that situation.
Yeah. So I want to speak a bit about the miscommunication that you're talking about, because because you're not getting into detail, which I understand. It's your personal life. You don't have to get into detail. But for the sake of the viewers, we do need to kind of break this down to help to understand. So one of the things that I know to be true is that people have a misconception around what tantric sex is.
Exactly.
Some people think like, oh, especially men, they get a little fearful because they think, oh my gosh, that means I need to have a hard on for 40 hours and we're going to have sex for 20 hours. How am I going to last?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that definitely was part of it, was when I was kind of communicating my desires. I was like, well, why wouldn't anyone want to do this? You know, it's amazing. I know how that feels and what it feels like to experience that. But to someone who hasn't actually practiced that or really learnt much about it, it can sound like quite a lot of pressure.
But even right now, as you're talking to me, I see where the miscommunication is happening, because you're saying like, I've experienced it, but you haven't experienced 20 hours of penetration. What you're talking about is what you've experienced in your understanding of tantric sex, which is really just about connection.
Exactly.
Super deep, being fully present with each other, fully connected. And most of the time, you're probably not even penetrating. And so much of Tantra and Tantric sex is the process before. It's breathing, it's connecting, it's really connecting soul to soul and finding union through that time together that can absolutely become Tantric sex.
Yeah.
And meaning sex in terms of penetration, but there's so much more that happens.
Yeah.
And would you say that because even right now I could see where that's
definitely
happening, because most people are not explicit. They're not explaining, this is what this means to me.
Exactly. And that's such a really, really important point that you've touched on, because I think tantric sex is different to every person. There's so many lineages. It's like a religion. You know, some people love red tantra and some people like white tantra. There's gold tantra. There's all these different branches and everyone is different. So, you know, you might resonate with polyamorous play parties, somebody else might want to be celibate for 5 years, and that both those things can be tantric. So it's really about, one, learning what that is to you, but then also level 2, being able to communicate that effectively with a partner, which is what I then learned in hindsight I wasn't doing properly.
Yeah. And even still, but it's perfect, because that's the point of relationships. We're growing, we're evolving. And just because we're using the same word does not mean it actually means the same thing to me or you or to whoever we're in relationship with. And even if you're speaking the English language, and even Ceri and I being from different countries, and literally we can say, I'm like, what do you mean by that though? Yeah. And she knows in her mind, like, duh, what do you mean? And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Exactly. And so I think in all relationships, this is why I like contracts and really talking and fleshing things out. It's like, what does monogamy mean to you? What are our rules in this relationship? Like, some people think monogamy means one thing where you're like, okay, you can still like spend time with an opposite sex person where there might be a connection, just as long as you don't kiss or cuddle or whatever. Someone else might say, no, for me, if there's emotional connection, that you cut that relationship because you keep all emotional connection between you in the monogamous relationship. So first of all, it's really important that you communicate with whomever you might be wanting to have an experience with or a tantric experience. The second thing I want to mention is how you mentioned, like, there's so many different lineages. Like, there is the Egyptian lineage of Tantra. There is the Buddhist lineage of Tantra. There are these more new age tantric ways that have come to the surface. There are even the ways that go back to Mary, Magdalene, and Yeshua, and there's even the Taoist way. And so there's so many different ways and different lineages. And some of the lineages believe in pure monogamy, like you're in a divine union relationship, or at least full commitment, where you fully love, respect, and trust each other. And we talked about this a bit in the Kim and Nami episode. I can't remember. It's like 63, I think, number 63 of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show episode. And you know, it's so important because there's so many factors in it. And the moment you have fear, you're not in love, you're not in trust. Yeah. And that's a big part of it. And so I feel like let's get a little bit into, because you even talked about celibacy and really the idea of Tantra is deeper connection. So if you are having a time where you have celibacy, it's amazing because it's a time for you to connect more deeply with yourself. And you mentioned, Ceri, that you have had times like that, but I also know you to be a high sexual energy woman, and that you move that into your creations because sexual energy is creation energy. So maybe you want to share a bit more about that in like the music production world and your artistry. And
yeah, I mean, it's very interesting because I think it's quite hard for some people to understand that I have like both of these sides of myself.
Which sides?
Like a more sexual side and a more celibate side. And even when I'm having a period of voluntary celibacy, I may still go to a sex club and play a 4-hour set and play songs about having sex. And, you know, I really get into it, and I love singing along and dancing and just really getting into the music. And I guess it's in a way I'm letting that energy out through the music that I'm making or the music that I'm playing. And I think for me, celibacy is a massive part of being truly tantric, because if you can learn to withhold your desires and really cultivate discernment and willpower within relationships and within sexual encounters, I feel like that gives you the space to come at it from a place of a cup overflowing rather than filling a void, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And you're also speaking to the power of discipline. When you choose to be celibate, even if there's temptations that come along, you build a deeper connection with yourself. And part of Tantra is learning how to move the sexual energy in your body. And a big part of Tantra is like not even that sexual, actually. You're like visualizing, you're breathing, you're not thinking about anything sexual, actually. It's very meditative. And that requires discipline and also it requires discipline because it's not about the orgasm. And specifically, it is, but it's not about ejaculation, let's say for men. And for women, you are cultivating higher and higher levels of pleasure through edging. Ceri's wearing an edging t-shirt, and it has like the orgasmic Madonna on it, the Mother Mary on it. And you know, Mother Mary was a tantric practitioner, as was Mary Magdalene. They were initiates of Isis through the Egyptian tantric line. So Mary Magdalene and Yeshua were having tantric sex. They were married. They were a couple. And all of that power and energy they were using for healing the world, healing people, creating miracles, because that's what energy does. It creates miracles when you channel in high frequency energy. And so that discipline is so important when you're in partnership engaging in tantric sex, because you just don't want to spill over. You want to like grow the cup, grow the pleasure, grow, and then you can actually touch God. And what I mean by that is have a transcendental type of experience that is so much more pleasurable, like almost like a psychedelic experience, rather than just let me just get off in like a few minutes or a half hour and then boom, be done for the evening.
Yeah, for sure. And I've definitely had experiences of that, and it was amazing. And I feel like I've had experience of that actually through non-penetrative sex as well. So when I've actually waited within a container of a relationship, whether that be something a bit more casual or a bit more long-term, like actually waiting within that to have sex, which is something I didn't necessarily do as I was a younger girl. And I'm cultivating how to do that more later in life. And it can be really, really powerful.
Yeah, because a big part of tantric sex is foreplay. And we're going to talk more about that in the bonus episode. And and that's what you're speaking of. And that foreplay, like that discipline to like not just hurry up and do it, that discipline to be able to enjoy the pleasure it requires that. So if you have never had periods of celibacy, it actually would support you in your tantric cultivation because it helps to create more connection.
Definitely. And I think as we were talking about the other day, we both have come to quite a similar understanding of what Tantra means for us. And we have quite similar views in that. And that's not to say people with other views are wrong. It's just different. And I think everyone has to have their own journey with this and work out what resonates with them. You know, I don't really belong to one lineage. I take bits from each one. I read books and I'm like, yeah, that resonates with me. I'm going to kind of incorporate that into my life. And like, no, that doesn't resonate with me. I'm just going to kind of leave that. But to be able to do that, I've had to spend a lot of time cultivating good intuition and being able to listen to my body and listen to my heart to work out what resonates with me. Because I do feel there are certain branches where it's like, this is what you have to do and you have to follow it. And they can almost be a little bit culty. And I think that's why these miscommunications and misconceptions happen, because people can misunderstand that.
Absolutely. And let's get into that, like what we believe our definition is. So for me, I feel that Tantra is a spiritual practice, and it's the use and cultivation of your sexual energy for spiritual enlightenment. And part of what that looks like is moving your sexual energy from the sacral energy center, which is between your hips, which is where your sexual organs are. And you learn through different practices, which are the tantric practices, of how to grow that energy, and then how to, without spilling it, and then how to move it up into the higher energy centers that result in opening, expanding, bringing more energy that then gift you spiritual gifts. And this is when you increase your flow with the universe and you enter into greater synchronicity. This is when you develop siddhis, which Siddhis, which are spiritual gifts, like increasing your intuition, activating your clairvoyance, your clairaudience. So basically like psychic abilities and psychic gifts. And it helps for health. So Tantra is a very, very healing practice because you're moving this powerful life force energy. You move it to different parts of the body. So where there may be an energy blockage, your sexual energy is so powerful, it can push through the blockage. And so that you're a healthier person, the more you're moving your sexual energy. Now, I want to make it clear, when you grow your sexual energy and it stays stuck in your second energy center, this is when we see more of a perverted version of sexuality, which is what we see in mainstream society when people are watching pornography and they're masturbating, but they're masturbating in a way that's like, if you were a male, you would just kind of like masturbate and ejaculate after a few minutes and then be done. Like, this is low vibration. This is actually going to deplete your energy versus grow it. But when you do self-pleasure in a way that is tantric, it's actually going to grow your energy and you're going to receive energy from it. And so if you want to share a bit about your tantric.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with all of that. And I also think for me as well, Tantra is about not just sex. It's about a lifestyle. It's about a way of living, a way of being, and just being connected to yourself and having presence, as well as having presence and connection with those around you. And that doesn't have to be in a sexual sense. It's just a way of life, really. And then the sex is a bonus.
So elaborate a bit more about what you mean by Tantra as a lifestyle.
Well, I just try and cultivate that presence within myself and my own energy in everything I do. Even doing the washing up, or making some music, or having lunch with my friends. Having that full presence and being able to communicate is in a present way, which I think, the way that we live with mobile phones and notifications, our energy is so scattered now. I think it actually takes cultivating to be able to have full presence. And I definitely, for me, I also teach people how to make music. And I've noticed over the last 10 years, attention spans are just dwindling because of social media and, instant gratification, notifications. So we have to put more effort in than ever before to really cultivate presence. And yes, if we cultivate that into our life, of course, that is going to bleed over into other areas and into that sexual energy too, which is obviously amazing as well.
Yeah, so you're speaking mainly to focus, presence, and connection, and of course, pleasure. A tantric lifestyle is really about pleasure, and we can experience pleasure through our senses, which is why I feel like music production and DJing like that you do is so connected, because I know even for myself, when I go out dancing and there's music, or if I just dance with myself, it really moves our sexual energy. It is a tantric practice to dance and feel that pleasure and have it move. And I know that over the years, I developed synesthesia, where for me, the sense of touch and the sense of sound are connected. So when I'm hearing really great music and it's just like speaking to my soul, I start to feel pleasure in my body. And it can be orgasmic. And I think you've mentioned you've had that experience before as well.
Yeah, I've had a few experiences like that as well. One of the moments I had was after the pandemic, my first gig back in a big, big club with massive speakers. And I played this track with all these amazing synths. And it was just like the first time I'd heard music loud for so long. And I literally felt like this waves of pleasure, like an orgasm kind of running through my body. And one of my goals as a music producer is to make a track that makes people orgasm. I don't know if I've done it yet. Maybe I have. Let me know if you have had an experience, but I would love to do that one day if I've not done it already.
Yeah. And you're speaking to something else about how when you start to build a tantric practice with yourself or your partner, I know like one of my goals is with my beloved, someday I would love to be able to just eye gaze and be able to orgasm. Because you can have all kinds of orgasms. You can have a heartgasm, you can have a throatgasm, you can have a full body orgasm. And I once actually had a full body orgasm in a space where I was being celebrated for my birthday, and I was being loved on through sound and massage and touch. And I had my clothes on. It was with a bunch of friends, and it was not an orgy thing or anything. And the energy was building so much, and there was just so much love and so much presence that it was like this laughgasm. It's like the energy built and built and built, and it was just like, ah! And it was like, but if it was a full body orgasm experience. And that's the thing. Like, and so that goes to show you right there the misconceptions of this idea that you need to like penetrate for all these hours for tantric sex to be had.
Yeah, I guess it's like a sense of pure bliss and joy rather than just kind of getting off to scratch an itch. That's kind of how I would describe it. And I also mentioned to you as well when we spoke privately, but I'd love to share it with you guys as well, is about the courses that I've done to help evolve this side of me. So I did the Erotic Blueprints, which is almost like the love languages for sex. So everybody is born with an erotic blueprint. You might not know what yours is, but it's really, really interesting and helpful to find that out, and also to find out what your partner's is too, because you may have mismatched blueprints and you may realize that it's not a problem, because some people could perceive that as a problem. But if you have the awareness of that and go, oh, actually, it's not that we're not compatible, we just have mismatched blueprints, you can actually work together to work on that and create something that is really pleasurable for both of you.
I just want to add in here. So what she's talking, remember with communication, we want to assume like no one knows what erotic blueprints are. No one understands what you're saying when you say blueprint. Some people might, but for the most part, no. So it's this idea that we each have a different style of the kind of sex we like to have. And just like love languages, like there's touch and quality time, etc., there's all kinds of flavors of sex that you can have. And so some people have ways that is just more naturally how they are and what they like best. And so that's what she's referring to when she says blueprints.
Yeah, so the blueprints, they're sexual, sensual, energetic, kinky, or a shapeshifter. And there's actually a quiz that you can do online to find out what you are. And I do believe that Miss Jaya, who invented the blueprints, has just released a book about them as well. And I also did Layla Martin's Vita Coaching, which was a program to really help you kind of connect more to yourself, not just in a sexual way, but in life. And I also did Angharad's Unleash Your You program, which was kind of tantric breath work and also sexual trauma healing, because I think, especially in our generation, I think there has been a lot of sexual trauma, and some of it's kind of more under the radar, some of it's more covert, but I think most people in the world probably have experienced some form of that at some point in their life. So it's really, really good to be able to just release that. And there's various practices that you can do for that as well.
Yeah, and I love having episodes like this because all of my work, I teach couples and singles about tantric sex, the practices, etc. Even in my women's program, there's a whole module called like the Tantrika, because this is basically how we have our sexuality be in a more conscious way. Just like you can breathe like this, or you can breathe more deeply and learn breath work. Just like you could just go about your life robotically, or you can learn to become more conscious. Just like you can go on and continue to have unconscious sex, or sex that's just like fulfilling a need, or you can have the best sex of your life that energizes you and enhances your health. So all of the work and all of the episodes that I have are all about enhancing our highest potential. And so I'm so grateful that Ceri created this. So I'm so grateful that Ceri created this track, because I feel like by her doing so, she is bringing just the idea of tantric sex to the masses. And maybe that's going to get someone curious to like Google it and be like, oh, what is that? Yeah. Or listen to this episode or whatever. And then we're basically increasing consciousness on the planet. You raise your frequency when you have tantric sex versus just regular sex. And so I really invite you to take time to explore what it is. Maybe read a book, maybe take a course. Maybe with your partner, just Google some things, try some things out, or hire a coach or whatever, right? Like I love sharing. So of course, contact me if you want to. And Ceri, where can people find your music? Where can they connect with you more? And yeah, and anything else you kind of want to share before we close?
It was quite funny what you just said, actually, because when I was sending some of my DJ friends the track, like before it came out, I was sending it to a few people for feedback. And one of my friends wrote back and he was like, I don't know what kind of sex tantric is, but I love the track. So it's just exactly what you were saying. So maybe he's now on a little Google search. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Ceri Music, and it's Ceri with a C, so Ceri, and I'm on Spotify and SoundCloud and all those places as well.
So beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you for all of your art, your music creations. The track is so fun.
And the track's called Don't You Wanna.
Don't You Wanna. So find that on Spotify and all the other spaces. And she also has vinyls as well. And tune in to the bonus episode. We're going to dive deeper into how to create a tantric sex practice with yourself and or your partner. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much for being here. Bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Please like this podcast and share it with anyone you feel would benefit. Subscribe to the podcast to receive bonus content, and remember, every Monday the video version goes live on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being on the ascension path with me and for doing this great work.